So the next one is the panel. It's moderated by Michael Chapman of Cortus. And I will already call the participants on stage. It's Thomas Schneid from Infineon, Maricel Ventura from Codasip, Francesco Rossi from Resiltech, Pedro Lopez from Quintauris, and Hartmut Schittko from CARIAD. Thank you very much. Enjoy the panel.
Okay, so the title for the panel is there, Accelerating Innovation with RISC-V. How do we go from early adoption to industry-wide deployment in the automotive industry? So I'd like to very quickly that everybody here introduce themselves and also particularly what they're doing for RISC-V in automotive. So maybe we just start with you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So Thomas Schneid, I'm part of Infineon Automotive Microcontroller, responsible for software partner and ecosystem management, in particular also the IP we are using. As long as we have not officially announced our RISC-V products, I'm responsible for the RISC-V campaign at Automotive. And in this capacity, I'm also part of the RVI board as a co-chair, and I'm also looking for Quintauris as a shareholder, and I think we are going to talk about this today. Awesome. Hartmut.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. So I'm Hartmut. I'm part of CARIAD, which is Volkswagen Group's software entity. And there specifically, I'm the hardware guy, so in charge of the compute platform hardware part. That's the semiconductor, the electrical and mechanical design of the ECU that controls all the others functionality. And as such, we're definitely looking into future compute concepts such as RISC-V and really eager to learn what's going on there and how we can make use of that.
Hi everybody. I'm Francesco Rossi from Resiltech. In Resiltech, I'm the director of safety activities. If we step back, I was a digital designer. In my heart, I still am. So I really enjoyed all the stuff about RISC-V IP. What we do for RISC-V ecosystem, we help the IP guys to reach safety and security compliance, and we also provide software solution. And probably we'll touch later in some aspect in the panel. We also are quite active on open source software supporting safety in RISC-V.
Thank you. So Pedro Lopez, I'm the managing director of Quintauris, and I'm acting as well as leading our market strategies. At Quintauris, our goal is to first serve the shareholders that founded the organization in a way that we secured an industrialization of RISC-V in automotive is a reality. And doing that, we are not only working with the majority of the IP vendors in the industry, but as well with the software and other level integrators, which need confidence around the complete ecosystem to transition and get the opportunity to work with RISC-V.
Hello. My name is Maricel Ventura. I'm working for Codasip. Also in the past life, I worked for automotive for 15 years from a tier 1 company, particularly on power electronics. I've joined Codasip, also responsible for functional safety for process and compliance.
Thank you. And briefly, myself, I'm Michael Chapman from Cortus. We're a fabless semiconductor manufacturer. With regards to RISC-V, we're developing a whole range of RISC-V products for the automotive industry, going from basically from edge nodes to the central HPC node in a software-defined vehicle. That includes AI for image inference, and also a little bit separate from that, also we do battery management systems, in particular cell level monitoring. So, first question, maybe at a high level, what do you think is the potential of RISC-V in automotive, and how will open hardware change what we do in computing infrastructure in cars and vehicles in general?
Should we go the regular way, or?
If anybody wants to start that, please go ahead.
Then I would, because as Infineon, I think I need to answer the question, because otherwise something is awkward. And Hartmut, sorry, I know you're our customer, for us, the journey started already a few years ago when we decided our platform around 3 years ago to choose for RISC-V. Number one, the decision was straightforward because we wanted to have the opportunity, number one, shaping an open standard for automotive. So we really saw that this is a large opportunity compared to what was available in the market, where we saw at this time already that this was rather static. So we saw that as a great opportunity entering, number one, open standard market, and number two, having an influence on that. And then second, not only the technical opportunity, but also the opportunity of open standards, open source, is beyond the technical aspects an interesting element where we think that we are very well known for closed standards as an expert for dependability, safety, quality, whatsoever, to open a new chapter for open standards. And therefore, it was a good decision, and we are still convinced that this is the right way to go. Hartmut?
Yeah, so maybe a few comments from my end, as we are at the end of the value chain. So we are seeing currently a couple of very interesting developments in automotive. One of them, of course, is shift towards a software-defined vehicle. We already had it on many slides, SDV. And so what does it mean? It means that there's more and more value creation in the software part of it, and you cannot do this while keeping the rest of the value chain static as it was, so that there's eventually one tier one delivering some black box that has eventually some semiconductors, which are yet again another black box. So it means it's a great opportunity. So that for us as a car OEM, we grow closer to the community that does chips and software, because these really need to work flawlessly together and nicely dovetailed into each other, especially when it comes to high-performance compute tasks.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Pedro, you have something to add?
Sorry, we need to share. Yeah, definitely. Since we started working in Quintauris, it's not only by the drive of the shareholders, but the complete community and the ecosystem, the automotive ecosystem, receive us with open arms, because especially for the software world and the software-defined vehicle, it's a key component that we are seeing for the transition. The possibility of having an open standard working under the hood reduce a lot the liabilities and the implications of a potential lock-in. That, together with the fact that the industry is towards a little bit more standardization in the sense of commonalities and differentiation, is the perfect mix for success. And the move already done by some of the SoC vendors to transition to RISC-V is the first proof of that. But we are convinced that in the following years, as it has been with the software-defined vehicle, the EV startups will take over and will be the first one to transition to RISC-V, and then the traditional ones will follow as well in the same procedure.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
On another aspect is, I see RISC-V the opportunity really to help the software algorithm, or for example in the safety concept, where I've seen some calculations that's trying to achieve a certain accuracy. We always try to resolve it by trying to define the software algorithm, the formulas we use, more sensors to make it more accurate. But RISC-V has opened up another dimension where you can improve the accuracy if you have a RISC-V ISAUs with customization included. So this would help our software colleagues as well to have this co-design, which RISC-V offers, not only limited to hardware development.
I would just add, from our perspective as a silicon provider, it's what our customers are asking for automotive, for avionics, and for everything else. It's not always appropriate for everything else. For instance, for SIM card, it's not particularly appropriate, but for most things, it can be appropriate. Okay, safety, of course, and to a lesser extent security are major concerns for automotive industry. How do you think RISC-V can help, and/or what do you think we need to do to make that solution complete?
Yep, I can go. And by the way, with respect to the previous question, I actually sharing, of course, the view of everyone. Maybe another aspect was that the one key element is the innovation. Okay, so this was already touched. Another one might be the speed of the evolution, which means, okay, maybe for some of the player now, the adoption of RISC-V seems to start a bit slow, maybe, okay? And maybe one good reason is actually that of course, there is a bit of uncertainty in the adoption of something new, which is normal, okay? But on the other side, most likely, there will be a real shift and an improvement in the speed in the coming year for a number of reasons. One is definitely that the fact that the technology is open will actually mean that there is a very wide ecosystem, okay, with a lot of knowledge spread out, okay, which at a certain point will act as an accelerator factor. And this is not something that can be done by one company only, okay, so that will definitely help. Coming back to the second point, safety is another aspect where there are two items which are a bit of in contradiction. One is the innovation, okay? That one is that, of course, people want to have a reliable, stable solution. They need to trust, okay? Here again, I guess one of the very good things is that in an open environment, especially where the hardware software speaks really close to each other, the knowledge which is spread, which can go from from the developer up to the certifier itself. So I mean, in the full chain, if you go up to the end, it really helps in making a solution really open and explorable and composable. Okay, so everyone can really focus on its own part of the story, and there is a huge potential over in the open source software. Okay, for example, we are now. There was before we saw from JITJU like the whole SDV project, okay, which is a key focus on open software and safety. We are part of it, but the good story is that there are examples like hypervisor like Sen, okay, which is an open source software, which is going to be certified for safety and will have RISC-V porting, and it's a bit a new model where. The idea is that the ecosystem will work on the design side, okay, together with the companies, which will improve the reliability of the solution. So it's really like one hand and the other. Like if you speak about safety, the left cycle about design, the right cycle about verification. And this is something where most likely in a closed environment cannot work. Maricel?
From compliance point of view, we have to build up the integrity to our automotive customers. And one of this is, of course, what you always hear is ISO 26262 and 21434 for security. And as RISC-V is trying to penetrate the automotive industry, it gives a good credibility for RISC-V that more and more company CPU cores are certified against ASIL D or ASIL B. But just to take note, certification is not required for ISO 26262. However, when you try to build the confidence that we can provide high-quality, reliable product, it's a good entry level to provide certification. It's a good start for us to see that we are serious about what we're doing. We are following design standards, as what we have seen in previous presentation, that the automotive industry is very conservative. They're very attached to state-of-the-art implementation and also design standards. So if we all work together with a specific design, with RISC-V, this will help really build also demonstration that will take the ecosystem together, demonstrate that the CPU core works together with the ecosystem, not a standalone, This is a good way to really, demonstrate to the customer, of to automotive suppliers, tier 1 or tier 2, that RISC-V is here to stay, not to develop a legacy project, but to see a future of the vehicle with RISC-V on it.
One aspect related to safety is the confinement of errors. And I think there's some opportunities there for standardization, which haven't been addressed yet in the RISC-V community. So I'm thinking of big chips which are running multiple operating systems with some hard real-time, maybe bare metal program part, and maybe running Linux on some other part of the system. And it's very important that if one operating system for a reason or another becomes totally rogue, it should not have an impact on the rest of the chip. So, the mechanisms to do this are relatively straightforward, but there are many ways of doing it, and maybe there's an opportunity for standardization there.
Yeah. I think that this is a key topic for the complete supply chain, and it can really break the dream or the ambition that we have as a RISC-V community, because we need to look at the financial aspects behind certification and safety and cybersecurity. Well, the software ecosystem is already running in safety programs with other processor vendors. The IP core vendors need to do a massive investment in order to certify their cores, keep up with their the innovation pace that the industry, the ecosystem has been providing, and at the same time wish for the 5, 6, 7 years that the return of investment will start for the ecosystem. So I think as a industry we need to be really mindful, and here I'm looking at the OEMs and the SoC vendors especially, about the cost structure that setting an IP for safety and cybersecurity will have, and how do we enable that we can have this avoiding the lock-in standardizing, but at the same time having a healthy industry where the IP vendors and the core vendors are able to transition into these safety standards in a way that does not drain them down.
Yeah, maybe chiming in on that. So it's the sad truth is, of course, like automotive standards won't go away, and so RISC-V is now 15 years old in a teenage phase, trying to break out. No, so the rules will stay. And but the good part is, of course, that the community can go together, work together, do not reinvent the wheel, reuse what's there, and use the learnings from the past. And as you said, Michael, so there's also like new ways and forms that you can do, that you can actually outperform existing things which have some legacy burden to carry that you don't need to design in.
Yeah, I mentioned that actually we have these requirements, very strong requirements coming from the avionics industry, and I'm sure we will see the similar kind of requirements propagate into the automotive industry as well.
Yeah, but actually this is an opportunity to lower the cost. I mean, overall. So if there is a sharing of even methodologies or sharing of software, even potentially verification strategy, okay? Now, if everyone is, of course, trying to hide its own technology, and that's it, okay? It's their cost, they need to find their return on investment, but otherwise, this opens the possibility to actually lower the cost for each own company, because there is an ecosystem and because there are partners and because there is a common way to do things.
Yeah, I agree on the fact that if we want to have an industry where we are able to select between 3, 4, 5 IP vendors and that there is not a lock-in, we need to be really, the standardization and the fact that there are many things that can be done in the open is great, but at the end of the day, the cost for maintaining a complete portfolio with the safety and the cybersecurity requirements that obviously they cannot disappear, need to have a business model that enable those IP vendors to transition and keep up with the innovation at the same time that the profitability might come in an earlier stage, because many of the programs that we are working on have 5, 10 years of development cycle. And for those companies investing in some of these programs, and we have seen it in other spaces like software, this derive into consolidation, and then the only few can actually access these programs realistically. So as an industry, I think we need to be really cautious when we look at the reality that the IP vendors will have unless the business model makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, we will have an industry in a few years where we will need to pick between one or two vendors, as it has happened in other areas of the automotive technical ecosystem.
Of course, if we end up with only two vendors, then the prospect of future innovation is kind of limited. So this is a severe disadvantage, of course. Okay. With RISC-V, how can we enable innovative hardware and software architectures, in particular, for co-design, co-simulation, and things like this, to improve the efficiency of things like the certification process, verification of complete systems?
Maybe I start on that, and because we start this process always when we start to develop a new platform, like one of our microcontrollers, and from the starting point, we collaborate very strong, even with our own ecosystem. So we use the means of shift left, and we cooperate with our key ecosystem around us to capture as much as possible requirements from the beginning, to validate already the starting process of the recycle of a new product, and especially also the exchange with our lead customers to help us before we run through a 5-year cycle of product delivery to customers, that we have a much better, more stable, reliable product, and we have a vital exchange in our hardware and the layers of software on top of that, to make the whole solution at the end more stable and reliable. And then the customer comes also, who wants to shift left and see the results of that validation process also much earlier.
Shifting left, that's exactly the right thing. So, as said before, so software-defined vehicles, it's a paradigm shift. And in the past, it used to be that there might have been some good friendship between the silicon vendor and the OEM, or the purchasing guy and the sales guy. They knew each other, had a few drinks together. And so it came that quite early there was a decision made, like, we go with this vendor, and across the lineup, like, that's the right vehicle on the roadmap, let's go for this. And then everything had to fall into place. You had to look what you could do with this, develop the proper software with it, and eventually, like, of course, like software is always like construction foam, it will just expand, so you need the next bigger vehicle on the roadmap. Software defined means that we can make a change here, so that we thoroughly need to think, like, what do we want to achieve? What type of data will we have to fight with, and how do we need to annotate them and work with them? And then, and only then, in the process, we say, like, okay, what's the right silicon concept to actually tackle this? And so, of course, with the vendors doing silicon, or the community of RISC-V working together with, it's a great opportunity to actually optimize the concepts in the process until you really now do the freeze, do the tape out, lock in the semiconductor and say, like, that's it. And then, of course, you still have to do the software. But there's more done in the field until you reach that point in time. And it's a great opportunity to really nicely dovetail software and hardware into each other.
How do we really handle the complex processes in software-defined vehicles, such as HPC, the central node there? Because we can't go and put that onto an FPGA. It doesn't fit by a long, long way. We certainly can't go and simulate that by software means, because the simulation speed is so extortionately slow. Okay, so what kind of abstractions do we need to introduce to be able to go and be able to verify each part independently? Because we can't do it all together at the same time. I think maybe.
If you start using quite heavily, like, virtual prototyping and virtual ECU is actually a good way to start. So we see a good number of projects where we do a very complex software architecture, and here about verification is merely verification of the software. Okay, where verification is really running in a almost hardware agnostic fashion. So they are really verifying the software architecture itself, and of course, with a typical, layered mindset. You can start from the communication, you can start from the services. It's mainly software-oriented. So, I mean, at least as a minimum, it's a new possibility which was not there in the past. Then it is probably not enough. It is probably still not mature. It is true. But it's definitely something new.
Yeah, no, a lot of the microcontrollers which are currently used in automotive, we can go and put onto an FPGA today. But with the future roadmap, we are running out of that option. So we have to be prepared for that and have methodologies in place where we can be sure that from the hardware perspective, we're developing the right system, the right chip, and from the software perspective, that we have the right hardware to support that software. So, yeah, there's some challenges ahead, but I think there's some ideas for solutions.
Just to tune in here, and this is really connected to RISC-V. As I said, at Infineon with RISC-V, we make a kind of new start. When we announced our intentions of RISC-V in April this year on Embedded World Fair, we already announced the first version of a virtual prototype of our first profile to enable, on the one side, the ecosystem, and on the other side, also some first leading customers snipping the capability and the consequences of the first concept. And I just say this is going to be an initiative which is going on, so the fidelity of the prototype will become better and better, and more use cases can be addressed with the virtual prototype at the end to enlarge the capability of different customers and partners to collaborate. And I think this is with RISC-V, not only from the technical aspect, but also from the way of how doing things together in an open standardization environment. It's a game changer eventually.
Okay, thank you. So maybe next topic, what concerns do we have with divergence in the RISC-V ecosystem? And also, for instance, we see an awful lot of extensions coming all the time. Almost everybody seems to want their own few custom instructions, but that kind of goes against the interest in actually having a common standard. So how do we kind of unify those things together to ensure that we don't lose out on the potential of innovation, but at the same time we benefit from actually having a standard?
Maybe a few words from me on that one. So, I mean, the world of technology is full of examples where there were like diverging paths. So think of like wireless communication, WCDMA, plain vanilla CDMA, or like for the older ones in the audience, like video standards, VHS, beta. So that's, of course, a concern, seeing like we're here now a community driving RISC-V, and there's also like all cores are equal, some are more equal, Quintauris being formed, and looking at this. So how does this work out? So we have the fear so that we end up with a fast track with certain features, and so if you want this, you go there, but then you lose compatibility to the one that opens standards and extensions, and so who? Maybe Pedro? Or
maybe I jump in first and then I hand over to Pedro. I think, Hartmut, thank you very much for this question, because somehow I was feeling the last days that was also a little bit the elephant in the room in a certain way. Because, yes, we as Infineon, we committed ourselves to drive standardization of automotive, and we're actively working on a portfolio which is today not announced, but it's going to happen. And then we were throwing in Quintauris as our joint venture to drive the standardization of RISC-V for automotive. And how does this work? So is this a threat or is this an opportunity? And maybe I try to outline at least the strategy which we had in mind as the joint venture builders. And I mean, we know very well how automotive is working, and we know that automotive is based on standardization. I mean, this is the foundation which is absolutely needed, that the whole system is working, that the scalability is achieved, and the efficiency at the end is also achieved. And therefore, due to this very competitive environment, having the top microcontrollers, SoC makers together in one joint venture, we needed this construct of a joint venture to let us work together but still fulfill the compliancy regulations of such a competitive environment. But now, as we are working, we founded the company 1.5 years ago, officially. We have worked together since then, the 6 joint venture partners, together with Quintauris, a very capable team. And I'm super happy to say that I think this is a great opportunity for RVI, because at least we managed to find a concept which is feasible, and now we can use Quintauris as a kind of booster to interact with RVI and drive the standard and really make sure that everybody is jumping on the train and we can continue and we are efficient in the way of moving forward. And now, Pedro, I think you also need to comment that.
As the elephant in the room. No, we are working really hard to exactly the opposite, to avoid diversion. And this comes as well sometimes maybe with favoring, delivering the required elements that our shareholder and the industry needs in order to take the next window of opportunity. And we are working really closely with the majority of the software vendors who understood clearly the value of Quintauris, that our aim is to try to standardize certain really specific use cases, and that the way to do that is by having certain time determinism. And we leverage the incredible innovation that RISC-V provides, but at the same time we need to be cautious with the timings to avoid that we lose key opportunities that are coming in our way in the following months and years. And in order to do that, we are maybe working in a slightly different way that the community is used to, but we will always try to donate to the extent possible the majority of our work to the community with the knowledge that it comes with. And for example, our CTO recently, I think yesterday, he was appointed, or he's going to be appointed, or for himself to be appointed chair of the microcontroller group. Our aim is to do as much as we can in the open. But that said, this is a commercial opportunity, and there are certain timing and opportunity-driven decisions that need to be taken, and we respond to our shareholders, and that will remain like that, with the aim of never diverge and try to standardize, but having in mind that there is a timing and predictability that need to happen for next year or 2 years from now have cars with RISC-V on them. And I think that's if we manage as a community and Quintauris driving to have cars in the next 10 years in the roads with RISC-V, with leaders such as Infineon, this is not a success of Quintauris, this is a success of the ecosystem.
Okay, kind of related to just what you've said, Pedro, is my next question. Okay, of course, we need to be successful as companies individually. Okay, but how do we go and work together to make the ecosystem successful? Because that is also in our interest as companies individually as well. So how can we sort of make that kind of all work successfully?
Yeah, maybe I have some good answers maybe for that. As Infineon, we were famous for this dependability ecosystem, what we call. So this was this closed shop, and now opening this environment in the means of an open architecture. I think we even take a larger responsibility in interacting with the ecosystem, that this is going to be a sustainable model for us and the entire environment around us. Because if one thing is absolutely clear, and the industry giants were demonstrating that to us, we will be only successful in such an open environment if we manage to have an environment where everybody can contribute to the larger success of an open system, and everybody has a certain way of contributing with high competence, expertise, and having at the end the chance also of a profitable environment. But we are absolutely convinced that this is possible because it was demonstrated already several times in the industry that something like that is possible. And I think it's also possible in automotive. If we take a larger responsibility, I see that at least on our side as the digital platform owner, that we take care of the environment around us. And I think, Hartmut, you're also, by the way, a platform owner of your even larger environment. So how do you see this point?
I don't have any worries here at all. So I'm just thinking like examples. Think of like Linux and Unix. They are ruling the world, especially if you count the mobile devices like iOS and Android. They're based on them. And still yet Microsoft isn't bankrupt. And so it's really like the rising tide lifts all boats. And now here I stop like with the generative platitudes. So I think there's ample of opportunity for everybody to really thrive in the environment, take the open standard, adapt it where needed, and find a niche or like maybe like rule a market, expanding the niche by coming up with innovation. So I see this really as a great opportunity and not as a danger of limiting oneself. So.
I agree completely. That's a question, Michael, that we are more asked since we started in Quintauris, which is how I'm going to be able to make money if I follow your guidance and your specification. And that as an industry, we will need to be really cautious to avoid a situation where if we want to have a rich ecosystem, as Thomas was mentioning, certain consolidation will obviously happen. It happens in every industry. But we need to be really cautious that as an industry, we are able to pay the price of having options. And that doesn't come for free. You need to pay the price, and that's not always an economical price. It can be a risk price. It can be a liability price. It can be formed in many ways. And as an industry, if we want to maintain the richness that you see in the summit, for example, with the amazing research organizations which are presenting connected to the industry vendors, we will need to pay the price. And that maybe is cost, maybe it's time, maybe it's slowing down innovation. And as a community, I think there is a huge opportunity, but we need to be cautious and alert to protect it and to be able to, in certain times, sacrifice certain aspects of the design to avoid the situation that we have in other industries where monopolies are de facto.
I see only one danger, not to move. That's the biggest risk at the end.
Of course.
For safety again. So I'm looking forward for RISC-V to have a similar, like an e-gas concept, where different OEMs comes together to have a safety culture that most of the suppliers in automotive have the same concept but different implementations. So the implementation is where you have a differentiation how you manage your business and profitability. So at the abstraction level of the SoC, it will also be good to see a common safety concept for the hardware CPU together with the ecosystem, how the safety mechanism is seen as a safety case on a higher level, and not just on the hardware CPU alone. So this is something that we can commonly discuss the pain and the limitation of some of the safety mechanisms that are hard to implement, complexity, and some of the common hazards in terms of, or threats that are for security that has to be a common knowledge. We could develop RISC-V, not just a RISC-V common ISA, but also RISC-V which is safe and secured.
Thank you.
True. So maybe if we stretch a bit more the concept, actually, and we imagine a car only with RISC-V CPU completely, we could actually see a risk in having maybe only one source, okay? Because of basically, if we have one bug, it can kill down all the availability of the car. But actually, if we have different implementation, but which still they rely on a common architecture, okay? We can address complexity, okay? But maybe we can improve availability, okay? And then we need different supplier, okay? We cannot just rely on one. So and there could be a possibility where, everyone can still play its own role, even if, on a standardized base, like, which is...
Yeah, in the 1980s, we had second source suppliers for critical components. We've gone away from that system now, but maybe we need to come back to that after the catastrophic events we had with COVID and components not existing anymore.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we are not talking about geopolitics in the panel right now, topic, but that's a reality as well. I think RISC-V provides a great security to the SoC vendors and the tier ones to offer a rich set of possibilities that in the events that we hope will not repeat but are unpredictable, the industry have a possibility to have a plan B or a plan C or a plan D. And I believe that's one of the biggest assets as a community RISC-V poses to the next generation of semiconductors.
And adding to that, so being an open standard and if done right, so you have a common interface layer towards the software-defined vehicle. And so having like a major hiccup at one supplier makes it way easier also with much less investment for another supplier to jump in, and also for us as an OEM to change the bandwagon towards a different supplier without like tossing over the board the entire software that has been done so far.
And of course puts companies such as Volkswagen in a much stronger position to be able to go and negotiate prices because there's a second source. There's another supplier. What about software? For the software stack, do we need to go and innovate or work together to go and create something, or is AUTOSAR still the solution?
I think it will be really hard to replace AUTOSAR for the nature of the industry, but we see that that's evolving, and the software-defined vehicle that we were talking before is the proof of it. There's a transition from ECUs to centralized compute, and in that environment there will be a place for safe RTOS, which years ago there was not even a possibility to have a free RTOS into the vehicle. We see that this is the case. We are already in the infotainment scene, Android taking over, and there will be much more. Linux is a reality in the vehicles today. It's nothing that has not been proven. So I believe AUTOSAR and AUTOSAR Classic even will remain as a key component, but that doesn't mean that the industry is not evolving towards more competitive and out-of-the-box software solutions.
Interoperability is the golden recipe.
Yeah, I agree with Pedro. We should not work immediately against the flow of what automotive has already have, which is working. We have to work with them so that our RISC-V implementation is implemented or supported by the AUTOSAR. Then in the future, we could talk about other solutions, but we should not introduce more risk to the automotive industry, including also financial constraints for investment.
Yeah, I think one thing is, as Infineon, we are a broadliner everywhere inside. So far in automotive, the stringency of the software environment was for some part a problem, a barrier, but also for some part an efficiency topic because the variations were not so big. Now, if you want to build silicon to support the automotive market, you need to have a certain vision of mainstream, because otherwise you start to build many versions which will definitely not fulfill the cost and efficiency requirements also of the OEM market. So therefore I think we have a huge opportunity with open standards in combination with RISC-V, but I think we also need to have the mindset for standardization wherever this makes sense. I think we should not defocus this.
This is why my company is partnering with somebody else for AUTOSAR. So yes, we see that as a requirement. So anyway, let's come to the end of this round. So basically, just a very quick question. Where do you think we will be in 10 years' time with RISC-V in automotive?
Mainstream. That's our target at least.
Any other comment?
I see RISC-V is not going to be tagged as an alternative to ARM, but it's going to stay as a future RISC-V ISA for automotive, future vehicle.
From our end, we don't see an alternative. So it's as simple as that. We've foreseen that the industry will need what RISC-V is able to provide. And if we do the things right as a community, we should not have an alternative to RISC-V in automotive.
Yeah. Now, I just confirm that all the automotive suppliers we've talked to have asked for RISC-V, particularly, not anything else.
Yeah, but RISC-V has been born as an alternative. Yeah. So maybe you are contradicting yourself. So it will become only dominant, and maybe with only few suppliers, then something else will come, hopefully.
This is the cycle of life. So
exactly.
At the end, there is always somebody younger and stronger coming and taking over. But it's important to, as an industry, focus on the goal that the industrialization and the production must be the goal. Then if we reach 50%, it's 50%. But we as a community, we need to understand that we are in a unique position to do that, and the production is the goal. And if we hesitate, we are not going to be able to get there.
Yeah, so from OEM perspective, we of course would like to see the ecosystem to thrive. So maybe starting evolutionary inroads to the less ASIL-D critical, like chassis, body functions, eventually like getting into more a high workload, high performance compute, and eventually like leaving us with a new ecosystem, with a new like ISA standard. That's also like with a geopolitical, like having something that has a stronghold, not in or like being more diversified across this planet, put it that way, and so be then alternative and be there to stay.
So let's thank the panel. Thank you very much.